Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third webinar in our series, From Web to Native Apps, Advanced Mobile Marketing course. I'm Todd from Branch. I'm part of the marketing team. I'm in charge of all of our content. I'm really excited about the information we have today, so let's get into it. So this is Course 3, as many of you know. You were here for Course 2 and Course 1. Course 3 is Turning Installs into Users, the Guide to Mobile App Onboarding. And today we'll be joined by Aptimize to discuss some of the crucial aspects of onboarding and how you can improve your results. Just as a reminder, this is the third course in our series. We have 3 more coming up, and the next one takes place on May 31st, and it's how to trigger repeat behaviors and increase user engagement. And we'll be joined by Professor Rebecca Wang, who's an expert on the subject. So, and also as a reminder, you're already registered for that course if you're registered for this webinar as well. A few housekeeping items. The audio is on mute, but you will have an opportunity to ask questions. If you look down into the bottom left corner, you'll see a chat box where you can ask all your questions, and we'll answer all of those at the end. And then finally, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to view it afterwards. It's my honor to present our presenters today. I'd like to pass it over to Harvey Liu from Aptimize to introduce himself. Go ahead, Harvey.
Hi, everyone. This is Harvey, and I'm a Customer Success Manager at Aptimize. For the past year and a half, I've been working with some of our larger enterprise customers and helping them iterate and improve their mobile apps. Really excited to speak with you guys today.
Thanks, Harvey. And now I'd like to introduce Franco, as many of you know from the first 2 webinars. He's the head of enterprise marketing here at Branch. Take it away, Franco.
Thank you, Todd. Very excited again to be here. Welcome back, everyone. I'm glad you are joining us for webinar number 3. So today is probably one of my favorite topics in mobile and mobile marketing. We have a very good agenda. So first of all, we're going to touch on why onboarding is so important today. And then Aptimize and Harvey, they're going to walk us through some of the best practice to onboard new users in mobile. They are the experts in the subject. They are working with hundreds of customers to improve their onboarding flow, so they can share with us their learnings. And so they're going to show you some of the things that you can try and test on your own onboarding flow. And also we're going to look at how you can interpret the results of the testing and how you can iterate on those learnings. Before we get started, just as usual, very quickly about Branch and why we're here speaking about mobile and mobile marketing. So the company is 2.5 years old. We are the mobile deep linking platform. We raised $130 million in these 2.5 years. We are over 100 employees, and we are here in beautiful Palo Alto, California. But we also have offices in New York and India, Russia, Brazil, and UK. And over 24,000 apps are currently using Branch today. So what is Branch? We manage all the deep linking, and we solve a very big problem that exists today in mobile, that you cannot, it's very hard to link content and users directly into the app, to the specific content, and it's hard to measure the behavior when those users click on those links. So we are able to solve and bridge the gap between all the different channels and different sources and put them all together so you have a cohesive experience across and you are able to measure the results. We have a lot of very happy partners and customers, from Pinterest to Jet to Under Armour and many more. Okay, with that, let's get started. So this is the user journey that we mentioned at the beginning on the first webinar. We discussed acquisition last week with Morgan Brown. Hopefully all of you were able to attend and you learned some of the good advices that Morgan gave to us. In particular, you should be able to find your channel that is now performing so well, and you're able to get all these downloads. And now today we're going to cover onboarding, then next webinar is going to be about retention, and then we have monetization, and then we'll wrap it up with attribution and how to measure these results. Before we get started with this, I want to see a quick poll, so if you can answer to this simple question, which one is the most important stage of the user journey for you? at this stage of your company, at this stage of your app? I'll give you about 15 seconds to answer. Okay, let's see some of the results. It seems like there is a clear winner. And retention, yeah, that's an interesting one. Obviously, you're going to learn today how retention starts from onboarding, and that's why onboarding is going to become very, very important. And then next webinar, we'll discuss more about retention and the referral and how to get more virality and all of that. So let's look into onboarding today. So what does it mean to onboard a new user? Onboarding is basically all the action and the process that you go through to create a loyal user from an app download. And so in that simple process, you have to explain all the basic functionality of your product and the core value. So why people should be interested, why should they become a user, why should they register and continue using your app. And you need to make them successful from the beginning because it's a very quick interaction, and today people don't have a lot of patience to understand your product or figure it out. So you need to help them on that. So why is it crucial? So we're going to see how the CPI continues to rise. We saw last week. We are now above $2 per install on iOS. So those are all marketing money that are being spent every month by companies in the space. And so everyone is investing all this money. But once you get these downloads at $2 each, you don't have a user. You have just someone who has your icon on their phone. It hasn't gone through the process of registering or signing up or booking the hotel or a flight or whatever is the action that you want them to take on your app. And that first experience will determine if the user is going to become a loyal user. And so that goes into the retention topic, which we're going to discuss later. So you can see here how the cost per install is continuously rising. This was last year. This year it actually went even above the $1.24. We are passing $2. And then 1 out of 4 people, this is a clear statistic, abandons the app after one single use, or sometimes just after opening it once for a few seconds. And so the cost per loyal user is much higher than the cost per download. We're going above $4 for iOS, just to get a loyal active user. And so how can we get more of these active users so that will reduce our cost per loyal user, and so make us and increasing the user and improving the user experience on the app. So one of my favorite books of all time is a book called Hooked from Nir Eyal. And Nir talks about how you can how can you create products that create habits into your users. And that's how you get a loyal user. If you think about some of the apps that you're using every day, like for example, maybe Facebook or Twitter or Pinterest, those products have formed a habit in you. So maybe sometimes you're bored or you don't even think about it. You pull out your phone and you just start browsing Facebook or browsing Twitter. That's all habits that you are not even considering, and they might be subconscious, but those companies were able to create those habits in you. And so you should not just try to get them to click something. You need to create that haha moment that Optimize is going to walk you through how to obtain. And the way they do that is by creating this changing in your behavior by basically adjusting the user experience and creating these hooks. Think about another interesting example today was Pokemon Go. If any of you have ever played, that's a very simple application, but very addictive. And same thing, they were able to create this habit. Or if you go a few years ago with Farmville, how many billions of dollars were spent in virtual cows and virtual pigs and to buy strawberries on Farmville? Those were all addictive products that created habits in us, and so users were going back day after day after day. So Nir talks about this hook model and how can you get to transform your product into into a habit for the user. So everything starts from a trigger, which can be external or internal. So an external trigger, for example, is someone that sends you a link to a property on Airbnb, and they said, "Oh, check this out. We can go there for very cheap, and it's an awesome house." That's an external trigger. So you will go there and check this property on Airbnb. Or an internal trigger could just be, you are bored, or you are frustrated, or you're angry, and so that triggers you to do an action. So maybe you're bored, you go on Facebook, or you're scared, you go and check your stock portfolio, whatever that is, that triggers an action. So an action, you can, at this point, the user is in your app, so you can influence what he's going to do next by making it very easy for him or her to do that action. And also, you have to look at what is their motivation to do that action. And we're going to see some examples later, even with Optimize and looking at the onboarding flow. Once they do that action, what makes it addictive and what makes it to stick is the reward that you are giving them. So obviously, who master that variable reward are, for example, casinos and the slot machine. That's a very quick, instant reward, which is always changing. That variable component is really, really important, because if I expect always the same reward, not that addictive. But if I don't know what's going to happen next, and I have that excitement building that I can feel internally, and I have dopamine release because I'm expecting something good to happen, that's what makes it addictive. That's what makes users to go back again and again. And finally, once you are able to figure out what's the variable reward that you want to give them, that should be something instantaneous, you have to find a way for the user to invest something in your app. So when we talk about investing, it doesn't mean necessarily money. It's more like building something on top of it so that the user will not want to go and abandon all that work that they did. For example, Farmville, once the user had built this giant farm with all the animals in it, it took a lot of work and hours, and they're proud of what they built. They don't want to abandon it. They want to go back and continue work on that. Same on anything, like, for example, on Airbnb, I created my profile, I listed my property, I have my preferences there. Everything is configured, and I spend time, I've invested time. I won't continue going back. I'm not going to abandon to jump on something else where I have to restart from scratch. And so that goes back in a loop and continues on and on and on. So you can see how the user engagement starts from the first app visit, and that's when you create that hook, and you trigger that behavior that makes them go into the next action, then the next action, then the next action. And you have only one chance. If someone opens an app and then abandon it, it's not going to, and especially if it deletes that app from their phone, it's not going to download that again. So you have that chance that you have to use it wisely. And with that, I want to pass the microphone to Harvey, who's going to walk us through some of the best practice to onboard the new users.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Franco, for that fantastic insight. So now I'll take you guys through some examples that Optimize customers have used to test, iterate, and improve on their onboarding experience. So we'll start off real quick, just a level set. For those of you who aren't as familiar with Optimize, we are a best-in-class mobile A/B testing and mobile growth platform. We allow customers to A/B test their in-app content, design, and general user interface and experience. We also provide a feature for stage rollouts known as feature flags, and you can also go live with variant changes in just minutes with our instant updates and visual editor. And here's just a small list of some of the customers who've been using us for quite a while to improve and build out their testing culture and make iterative improvements to their in-app experience. So really quickly, we'll go over some of the really common onboarding mistakes that many product owners make when they first begin building out their app. Oftentimes, we'll see that there are assumptions made around onboarding, tutorials in terms of the content or the amount of information that is prompted. Not providing a clear value proposition when signing up often leads to high abandonment, and not directing or sort of guiding your users after initial registration also, as you can imagine, leads to higher abandonment, and not focusing on crucial first in-app actions to help drive your users to that aha moment, and making assumptions about iOS and Android and assuming that the user bases there are similar when often in reality they're very different segments of the population. So, driving users to the aha moment. So Franco talked on this briefly, but the aha moment is basically a set of actions that separates customers who find value in your product from those who don't. Many of our customers spend a lot of time trying to figure out what exactly that aha moment is when the end user realizes the actual value of the app and are motivated then to continue returning to it in order to drive more value from your mobile product. So here's an example of a number of successful companies who have discovered their aha moment and have built a lot of their in-app experience around driving users toward that aha moment. So Slack found that sending 2,000 messages within a single team is that sweet point for them in terms of seeing value in the product. Zynga, when user returns one day after sign up. On Facebook, it's when a user connects with at least 10 friends within 7 days of downloading. With Dropbox, it's creating one file in a folder. In Twitter, when X number of users followed and then Y% followed back, and LinkedIn similarly creating a certain number of connections. So the first thing we would always recommend for any mobile team is to try and identify and figure out what that aha moment is and start making these iterative tests and improvements to drive your users towards that direction. So we'll go over really quickly 7 ideas that you can try that we've seen a number of our customers use who found great success in testing the onboarding experience. Of course, onboarding will vary significantly from user base to user base, and different users will resonate with different types of onboarding. But if a user doesn't get through the onboarding, they're not going to see the rest of your app, and they may not ever get to the point where they understand the value of what you're trying to provide. So the first thing, a very common experiment we see is around hero image and value proposition. You can always use the Aptimize visual editor and a number of our testing tools to run experiments around which image is driving more users to the next step in your onboarding flow, and which value proposition content is resonating the most with your audience and keeping them engaged within your app. You can test each element separately, although in certain occasions, customers do test them in tandem. Number 2 is the overall experience of the onboarding tutorial itself. For most apps, the current trend is to display an onboarding funnel, oftentimes a multi-slide tutorial that ends with a registration page. In the case of Vivo, they initially started with a mandatory 4-step onboarding flow. But they did eventually begin to question whether or not this was the best way to engage their users and whether or not they could mitigate some of the drop-offs by making alterations to this onboarding experience. So they came up with the hypothesis that if they were to remove the tutorial altogether, they may be able to increase their logins and signups. So they tested a 2-step onboarding process versus their original 4-step onboarding process. So I'm going to throw this to you guys. I'm curious to hear from the audience perspective, which do you guys think produced the best test results? I'll give you a few seconds here to select one, and we'll reveal the results of the test in a second. Cool. So it looks like most of you guessed that the one-step registration form would yield a better result, and you would be correct. So we can see here through a combination of user tests and analytics, Vivo found that most users were just swiping through the tutorial without reading any of the copy. So they posited that if they were to just get rid of that tutorial altogether, they would decrease the rate of drop-off for users who abandoned before they even got to the registration page. So the event that they tracked here was the clicks on the sign-in button and clicks on the skip button, the number of successful signups, and the number of videos watched. And in addition to tracking the simple conversions on the sign-up page, we wanted to make sure that in removing the tutorial, we weren't taking away from the core functionality of the app. We also wanted to make sure that users from both versions of the app were still continuing to engage with the app in a desired way. So you'll see here that the number of completed logins increased by nearly 10%, and the number of completed signups increased by nearly 6%. So the next question is, altogether, does your app even need an onboarding tutorial? Vivo ran their experiment for about 28 days. They had over 160,000 participants in their experiment, and they wanted to ensure that their results were stable and were statistically significant. So as you can imagine, the results were pretty surprising for a number of people on the team who believed that there was value in the onboarding tutorial. So it turns out that it's not the case for every single app. Aptimize's A/B testing framework allows you to quickly create this type of experiment and track the results throughout the duration of the test. It also ensures that you don't make the mistake of running multiple tests on users or allocating different amounts of users to the control and test groups, which could possibly induce a level of bias or noise within your results. So here's an example of an onboarding tutorial in the Headspace app. So the third experiment idea is around registrations. It's important to understand that mobile users want to be able to reach the value of your app very quickly and simply. So always think about ways that you can remove any extraneous steps or any extraneous data points that your users may not find immediately valuable and that your team may not find immediately valuable. Hotel Tonight used Aptimize dynamic variables to test the elimination of the account creation from their checkout flow. The default experience had the standard mandatory account creation screen, and the variants included the name and email address field on the order summary screen. Hotel Tonight also removed the password creation field and replaced it with a reset link. So through running this experiment, they found that there was a 15% increase in conversions when they eliminated the mandatory account creation screen and only collected the bare minimum of required fields: first name, last name, and email. Call to actions are very commonly experimented on, and they're very simple to test too through the Aptimize dashboard. Always remember to write very clear and compelling copy. Sometimes it can be very tempting to add some frivolous material or get a little bit colorful and fluffy with the CTA. But once again, mobile users are expecting a much simpler and much more straightforward in-app experience. So keep that in mind. A lot of our customers experimented with various messages to see which one resonates the most with their end users, and the Aptimize platform allows you to do that. So I'm going to run through a quick example here of a call to action experiment that Glassdoor ran. Glassdoor's mobile app allows users to search for and apply to jobs. They can save interesting job listings, review or apply to them later, research companies, salaries, interview information. So job seekers have unlimited access to millions of job listings in Glassdoor. but they become members of Glassdoor by signing in and contributing content to the community in order to gain access to the rest of the content. So basically, Glassdoor requires that its members contribute to the community in order to benefit from it. Therefore, the product team at Glassdoor wanted to make sure that they were getting as many individuals to sign in and contribute and build to that content base as much as possible. And to help reach these goals, the team hypothesized that tweaking the call to action at the gate could be a key change. The original pop-up looks like the view on the far left. You'll see all 434 reviews, sign up button. So the team wanted to test out several different variations of the copy as well as formats for this pop-up. They hypothesized that either the new pop-up layout or the more value-packed CTA would help entice more users into signing in or contributing content. Glassdoor decided to test what copy or setup would work best with its sign-up strategy and crafted several different variants to see which would perform best. And you can see here variants A through D, respectively, compared to the control. So I'll give you guys a quick second here to read over those. The team tested various messaging and UI setups they thought would be effective for improving their metrics. The control had the statement, see all 434 reviews, and you'll see here the CTA button says sign up. So now that you guys have had some time to read over these, I'd love, again, to poll the audience and see if you guys have any thoughts around which variant performed the best in terms of yielding a higher user registration rate. So which one do you guys think is the winner for Glassdoor? All right, so it looks like we are tied here more or less between variant A and variant C. Very interesting. So it turns out that variant C had the highest yield, which yielded an over 8% lift in conversions. So the team had an inkling that a straightforward call to action, such as sign up, would probably perform better than the one that asked for more complex action on the part of the user. And they were right. Variant C, as you can see here, changed the formatting and slightly modified the copy, increasing their conversions by 8%. And this made sense to the team as it emphasized both the speed and the ease of creating an account while also providing the largest value proposition by clearly emphasizing that the user would be able to unlock everything on Glassdoor, which was the most specific in terms of benefit to the user. Using Aptimize, Glassdoor was also able to greatly increase their KPIs with ease and give them confidence that they had made the best decision. Meanwhile, interestingly enough, variant D, which states, add your review or salary to unlock everything on Glassdoor, performed the worst and actually decreased signups by nearly 50%. After analyzing the test results, the team believed that this was because this copy implied that the user would have to take extraneous steps after sign-up in order to gain full access to Glassdoor's information. This experiment really undernotes the power of a very clear, concise, and straightforward call to action. Similar to the call to action is also a very simple elemental change to your button color. Testing button colors is a really quick and simple way to experiment with the particularly resonant element of your app. Users are often swayed by these types of bright visual elements. And so here's a very quick example of how Runtastic used the Aptimize visual editor to test various colors on their login button. So the next experiment idea we have is around login options. So it's important to test whether your users like to have options for logging in. Sometimes the default login process can be very time consuming and users will abandon at a much higher rate. We find a lot of our customers yield high success when they give their users a few login options to help speed up the process. In this case, you can see here with Let Go, you can either log in with Facebook, you can log in with Google, or you can use your email. The next tip is using social proof. It's often important to leverage a similar user's behavior to incentivize actions for your end user base. 84% of consumers say that they either completely or at least somewhat trust recommendations from family members, colleagues, and friends about products, which is significantly higher than any other source. Using this to your advantage can have dramatic benefits. And two great examples of this include Venmo's feed and add friends functionality, as well as Branch's personalized referral onboarding for mobile. So Sujan Patel from Narrow.io has also written a fantastic post about how and how not to use social proof, which I would highly recommend to those of you in the audience who are interested in digging deeper into how to best leverage this to engage your users. So here's an example of a particularly clever way to leverage social proof to test peer validation and using third-party reviews. Some options you can consider here, obviously similar users, and users are very likely to follow what similar users or other users who particularly resonate with them are doing. Experts, often using celebrities, or showing a social feed as to what their friends are doing, or other crowds can often sway an end user behavior. So the final idea here is driving our users to a first action after registration. So this is particularly important. We often see abandonment after registration because then users are unable to determine what the next step is and how to drive to that core value of the app. So it's important to provide a little bit of guidance often so that your users can immediately see what that aha moment is. So some examples here in a lot of media and content streaming apps, creating a first playlist is a very powerful prompt that you can provide for your users. Or suggesting them to add friends or share the app can be a very resonant and powerful prompt as well. So once you've run all these experiments and you've collected all this data around onboarding and registration, you're going to want to know what this data means and be able to parse through all this information and interpret what these experiments are actually telling you. So here's an example of the Aptimize dashboard, and this is how we present the events and goals and the KPIs that you're tracking to make sure that the experiments you're running are yielding meaningful results. So Aptimize provides a lot of guidance in terms of how to determine the average sample size that you want to test. Most mobile apps don't have the hundreds of thousands or millions of monthly active users that the largest and most successful apps out there do. But that doesn't mean that you can't test. That doesn't mean you can't run very significant tests, and that doesn't mean that you can't yield very significant results, even if your user base is smaller. The average duration of an experiment. There are a lot of best practices around how long you should run an experiment for. And there certainly is sort of a benchmark that we've found, given the sample size and the size of your population, around when you should call an experiment. when you can definitively say that the results you're seeing will indicate user behavior on a greater level. Statistical significance is something that we have conversations a lot with our customers as well in terms of how to interpret statistical significance. What does it actually mean within the context of your experiment? And whether or not you should be using statistical significance as a benchmark for running an experiment. And if your experiment does not reach statistical significance, what that means for your test as well. Beyond this dashboard, Aptimize also provides a number of deeper analytics in terms of measuring your engagement, your retention metrics, 1-day retention, 7-day retention, and you also have the option of exporting this data into any other analytics platform to conduct even deeper, more advanced analytics around the data you've collected from these experiments. So before we wrap up here, we'll quickly run through some other successful examples of very powerful and very well done onboarding and registration flows. Here's an example of Robinhood onboarding page. There's a very clear CTA. It gives you a number of different options if you're not ready to commit to one in particular. And it prioritizes the one that the product owners really want to drive their users towards by highlighting the sign-up button. And there's a very clear and compelling value proposition. So we love this. We love this onboarding over at Aptimize. Here's another example from the Lookout app. Again, very easy and clear value proposition. The call to action it stands out. It's very clear. The user is immediately drawn to it. And the user is strongly compelled to engage with these elements on the app. Domino's does a very good job of this as well. They reduce a lot of friction by focusing on key actions. There is no prompt to create an account, and end users are provided with the option to create an account and save preferences. But users are first able to derive the value, and they immediately see the value proposition of the app in that aha moment before they have to go through the process of providing any additional information that they may not yet be ready to. So that's all the content we have today for examples of successful onboarding. I'm going to throw it back to the guys over at Branch for any questions that the audience may have.
Cool. Thanks, Harvey. That was great. We have a number of questions, and we've got some time, so we'll try and get to as many as we can. So we'll just kick things right off. And the first question I have is for Franco, and it is, so Franco, you mentioned those habit-forming products, but those products also happen to die. Why is that?
Yeah, so I probably use the example of Pokemon Go and Farmville, which now happen to have not died, especially Pokemon Go, but definitely slowed down from the initial peak. For gaming, it's very hard to continue maintaining that habit, which can last as long as a few days or a few months, and then it's hard to continue add value to that. Some gaming company were able to do that, but it's really hard. I can mention tons of other products that successfully created that habit, and they're able to maintain it over time. For example, Harvey mentioned Runtastic during the presentation. That's one of my apps that I use regularly. When I go running or jogging, I want to measure my results. I want to share it with friends. I have all my data there. I spend some time adding even the shoes that I use and all of that. So I definitely, I wouldn't see myself switching app or getting rid of that. Or other apps that I use, for example, TripAdvisor is another app that I have my data saved on, my preferences, and I can look at the reviews. I wrote a few reviews on my own. So those are all things where I put time, and I get that reward after I take a certain action. For example, again, on Runtastic, every time I get the final result in my analytics and I have my goal, I'm working toward that, and that's very rewarding, and it creates that loop that we show at the beginning.
Thanks, Franco. Harvey, you're up next. And the question is, how can we modify mobile app onboarding for current customers? And then they have a note, we have an engaged desktop user base, but are just starting to push for mobile app adoption.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you currently have a mobile product, it's very simple to just add the Aptimize SDK to your currently existing mobile app, and you can begin testing on your existing user base immediately. We absolutely have a large number of customers who are web-first companies, and they're making a huge push to drive them into the mobile space, and they employ a variety of tactics in doing that for their web users. One thing that you can also do within the Aptimize platform is segment out your experiments. So if you wanted to test your currently existing customer base on mobile, and separate that out from your newly adopted mobile users, we see a number of experiments around these types of different user cohorts, and they often yield very interesting results as well. As you can imagine, customers engage with web products very differently than they do on mobile products. And so a huge part and a large pain point for a number of our customers is identifying those differences and learning how to rebuild their web product in a mobile context that's a lot more resonant with mobile users.
Awesome. Thanks, Harvey. This next question is actually for both of you, and I'll start with Franco. But do you find that the aha moment is the agnostic of platforms, app, desktop, mobile web, and specific to customer behavior?
That's a very good question. So I'll let Harvey answer in more detail about the aha moment, but from our side, when you think of the aha moment and thinking of what is the action that you want to trigger on those users and you want to facilitate, you have to look at your analytics. You have to look and analyze your best users, who are your most loyal users, look at what they have in common, what action did they take, and you're going to see some correlation. You're going to see that, for example, I don't know, on Spotify, they're going to have to add at least X number of songs or creating X number of playlists, and you're going to see that you're going to put them in a chart, and you're going to see there is a tipping point where before 4 songs, for example, they all tend to drop after a few days. After 5 songs and above, they are going to stick around. And so what is that specific data that you can pull from your analytics, looking at your super loyal users, how can we make every other user do the same? And so everything that you do after, like Harvey showed, has to be done in a way that you can facilitate that specific action. So you just want to drive to that single action, nothing else. Harvey, you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, no, Franco, I think you absolutely, you hit the nail on the head there. I think it's difficult to make generalizations, too, about what exactly the correlation is between the aha moment and whether the vertical of the app or the platform. Really what we found is mobile users are such a sort of like a unique breed of customer, and even within verticals or within platforms, the aha moment can differ widely, and that's essentially the importance of testing everything out. It's always important to start with a hypothesis and an assumption, but always challenge those assumptions. And it's often the assumptions and not the questions you have that are the most sometimes damaging to building out a successful mobile product.
Yeah, and as Harvey was saying, sometimes we see that even iOS and Android are different. So don't assume that everything, once you find the action, is the same, because that action done on web might be completely different because of the nature of the platform. So you have to look at the analytics in a separate way, and it might be the same because of the nature of your product, but don't assume that it is. We saw plenty of times just Android and iOS user being completely different in what works and what doesn't for them.
Cool. Thanks, Franco. Thanks, Harvey. Harvey, we've got another one for you, and it is, how often should we work on changing our onboarding process?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of variability there. It depends on a number of factors. I think it depends on, how successful your onboarding is right now. It's important to constantly be tracking the retention of your users while you onboard. And most of our customers, they run experiments very constantly, and with every deploy, they'll test the most critical elements of their app. So from my perspective, I say you should be making changes all the time, whether that's with every release or at least with every quarter. But
Yeah, that's obviously a very difficult thing to do because you need the infrastructure and you need the data in order to create that personalized experience. This is something that we do here at Branch, is something that we can help with. Once you have established the deep linking infrastructure, so you're using our links, since we create this, we maintain the context throughout the whole experience. So if someone, for example, refers you on Airbnb and they send you a property and you don't have the app, you click on that link and you are taken to the App Store, you download the app. Normally, you don't have any personalized onboarding. You are starting from scratch. You don't even see that property. But since Airbnb uses Branch, not only you see exactly that property that the person shared with you, and so your initial experience with the app is very personalized because you click on the link to see the property, not to see a generic homepage, but also the referral code that your friend carries. So the friend that referred you maybe has $20 or whatever coupon code is with the app, is going to maintain there. So we're going to be able to see that you are referred by that person, or you're coming from that specific channel, like Facebook, for example, or any other social media. And we can customize the experience based on that data, because in Branch Links, we save all of that behavior and that data, and we can use the data to customize the application.
Perfect. Thanks, Franco. Let's see. Harvey, we've got one for you. What's the most common mistake you see of apps asking for too much on onboarding?
Yeah, well, that's exactly it right there, right? Asking for too much information, it can be very tedious for users. So I would always, harken back to the example of Hotel Tonight, ask for the absolute minimum. Oftentimes all you really need is just a name and an email. I've seen a number of customers, especially in retail, where they ask for credit card information, they ask for your gender, they ask for a lot of extraneous information that users may not necessarily want to provide up front. And especially for me, a personal pet peeve is whenever I'm prompted to provide long string text too early on. It's already pretty tedious typing an excessive amount of text on a mobile device, and if you're asking me for feedback, or if you're asking me for something like my credit card number, chances are I'm just going to abandon that and wait to do it later on, either on the website, or I may just abandon altogether. So just simplicity is absolutely the most important thing. If you just think about why people use mobile, it's because it's easy, it's because it's fast. And so I encourage every team who has challenges with onboarding or with checkouts even to think about what absolutely is the most necessary bits of user information. Keep it to 2 or 3 data points. And beyond that, the risk of user abandonment increases significantly.
Perfect. Thanks, Harvey. And then I think Franco has some thoughts on this subject as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we see over and over on people that want all the information up front. So on these companies asking right away all this information. And it doesn't work all the time. And sometimes they just don't need that information, not right away at least. Harvey mentioned Hotel Tonight, how they got rid of the whole onboarding, or the whole registration form. You can just browse the properties and the hotels right away. Same for Domino's. You just you can order the pizza and stay as a guest because maybe you're not gonna planning to go back. But if you wanna make it easier for you, just register, create a user, and then it's gonna be much easier for you. You have all your credit cards saved. You can check out with one click. But for Domino's, the action that they wanted was not to create a user; it was to order the pizza. And so, why you want to put a wall between the user and the action that you want them to take? So you can see how Domino's did the analysis. Look at what is the action that makes the difference. Because once a user orders the pizza and is wowed by the experience of how easy it was, it probably is going to stick around and come back and then create the user later, which is good. It's fine for them.
Perfect. And it looks like we have time for one more question, and this one is for Harvey. So this question was asked when you were talking about the Glassdoor example, and it says, are the results of the A/B test the same for every segment of users, or is it just one big test?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And we often do see that when we segment out results, we do see some variability in among how users respond to the experiment. So within the Aptimize dashboard, I would recommend you can add user segments. So you can look at how, and this is probably more relevant to more international users, but we often see if there's a net positive conversion change, but we segment out by region or we segment out by language, we'll often see that some regions have a negative lift, even though the overall results were positive. So I definitely would highly recommend, whether you're using Aptimize or some other analytics platform, to be very thoughtful about how what your user segments are, what those key user segments are, and to break down the data in as granular of a cohort as possible to drive more meaningful data. In terms of the actual Glassdoor experiment, I can't speak to what the sort of segmented out results were there, but generally speaking, absolutely yes, we do see that when breaking down results into more granular cohorts, we do see a lot of variability in performance at times.
Perfect. And we actually got one final question that I think is really important as well for you, Harvey, that I just want to quickly get in there. And it is, what is the benchmark for conversion from install to sign up to first action in general, and then if you have any information on media content apps?
Sorry, could you repeat that question? I'm not sure I completely understood it.
Sure. So they're wondering if there are any benchmarks for conversion from when a user installs the app to signs up through the onboarding flow, and then their first action inside of the app. Just in general, and then they asked specifically if you had any content on media content apps, but in general would work as well.
Yeah, so on the Aptimize website, we do have some case studies around how various customers have successfully run onboarding. I wouldn't say that there necessarily is an industry-wide benchmark right now, because mobile is still relatively new and there hasn't been much of a playbook in terms of what is determined to be successful. I would say that the most important thing here is to sort of compete against yourself and make sure that you're making iterative improvements and the changes are trending positive. The benchmark should be, in my opinion, and in my experience working with our customers, it's whatever that initial value is. If you're starting at a 5% conversion through your onboarding and registration, you should aim to increase that, even if it's an incremental improvement, right? So if you can get that from 5% to 7% in the span of a month, just through running a very simple experiment, there's no reason not to do that. And also sort of I find that the downside of benchmarks is that it sort of gives the illusion that there is a success point, which there isn't, right? The end goal should absolutely be to get all of your users to go through onboarding and registration. So I'd say the first step there is to really understand your user pain points, really dive deep into the analytics and be thoughtful about what the results mean when you're testing out the drop-off points in onboarding flow, and constantly seek to improve and iterate on that. And that really should be the internal benchmark that all teams use when they're making improvements to their mobile product.
Perfect. Thanks, Harvey. So we do have 2 more questions, and we still have about 4 minutes. So if it's all right with you, Harvey, we'll sneak some of these in. So I'll actually ask this one to Franco. So do you find that conversion rates tend to slowly trend downwards as the app scales? And these are the last 2 questions. They just barely came in, but I thought they were very important to cover.
Yeah, and I see there are many more questions coming, especially about different tests. So Harvey is going to follow up with all of you right after this on the specific of certain tests. So about the conversion that could slowly trend down, that I think is expected once you scale. I don't know exactly what conversion you mean, probably from user activation or is checkout, whatever that is. Once you scale and increase the number of users, obviously your conversion rate is going to start to decrease because you are now using new channels, probably for user acquisition that are less directly relevant to the type of user that you're looking for. So the quality of your user is less targeted, and that's a natural event that's going to happen. As long as you continue testing, you can actually counter that natural decrease by continuously optimizing and A/B testing on everything. So if you think about when you start doing A/B testing, like what Harvey showed during the examples, those gains that you can get, those results, they actually compound. Because if you were having, for example, 10% conversion rate, now you're increasing the 10% by 8%, or like 10%, so now you have 11% conversion rate. That now whatever you're increasing after is not on the 10%, it's on the 11%. And that's the result of continuously iterating on your results. And you're going to see those conversion rates actually increasing. And so you can a little bit counter that natural decrease.
Perfect. Thanks, Franco. And then Harvey, one last question, and this is the final one, no matter what. But Harvey, what are the reasons it makes more sense to have a different onboarding flow for Android and iOS?
The main reason there is just that Android users we've seen they're just simply different than iOS users. And of course, this is a bit of a blanketed statement and may not necessarily be the rule for all apps. But in general, especially when you have a much more global user base, we see significant differences in how Android users respond within a mobile product and iOS users. Some of it has to do with the hardware. Sometimes Android apps operate in a very different way than iOS apps, and so they may be a little bit slower. They may be a little bit clunkier. But in terms of the actual reasons why, there are just a number of demographic factors there that may impact how Android users interact with their mobile product versus iOS users. We definitely have seen, I can recall a number of cases with customers when they would replicate experiments across iOS and Android. And that's definitely a very good place to start, especially when you don't have quite as many data points to go on. But what we almost see pretty consistently all the time is the experiment yields different results, and eventually the 2 testing engines for the various platforms begin to diverge pretty significantly after the testing process ramps up.
Perfect. Thanks, Harvey. So that's all the time we have, guys. I want to thank Harvey and Apptimize so much for joining us. Thanks to Franco as well. This has been some incredible content, and we hope you guys can apply all these onboarding tips into your apps and into your brands. Just a quick reminder that the next webinar will be on May 31st. It's about increasing user engagement with Professor Wang, and we hope to see you then. Thanks, everyone.